Hi, friends. This is your pal, Scott Garibay. And today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and how Den of Thieves, Pantera, perfectly illustrates the correct way to get our Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves sequel. Okay, so let's dig into this. So first of all, no spoilers for Den of Thieves Pantera in this. I don't need to put any spoilers, so I won't, right? And also the reason why I'm not putting in, so usually I just say spoilers because I don't really care that much about the movie, or I don't know, I don't like dealing with the spoiler thing, but I'm going to deal with it here. And the reason why is I want to really encourage you to go see Den of Thieves Pantera with Ice Cube's son and Gerard Butler. I think our Ice Cube son's name is O'Shea Simpson Jr., okay? If it's different than that, correct me in the comments. Thank you. Yeah, and if you're curious, just check the comments. I'm sure somebody will correct me. You cannot be wrong on the internet without somebody, a hero leaping to their keyboard to say you're wrong, which that is a useful thing. All right, okay. Let's keep moving here. All right, so I'm fresh out of seeing it. I just saw it and it was phenomenal. And actually, I wasn't expecting much from it. Okay, I was kind of like, well, so first of all, me going to movies, holy cows, I saw 56 distinct movies on the big screen. Like that's not the number of movies I went to see. That's how many unique films I saw in 2024. So the Regal Pass, if you don't have it, man, that is a good deal. Get yourself the Regal Pass. It will change how you watch movies. So I went to see this movie, not really thinking that much of it. I'm like, it's going to cost me $1, right? Like, I did not expect anything from this movie. I saw Den of Thieves, and I really liked it. But I was blown away by Den of Thieves 2. Okay, so let's get into that. So Dungeons & Dragons, Gary Gygax's true name, right? So they called this Den of Thieves 2, and then they added the Pantera word on it. And I really respected that. They want to get rid of the 2, right? A lot of games and stuff, they're like, don't put a number on it because it seems like a plop out, right? And I get that, right? Hollywood plopped out a lot of crap sequels for decades, right? So when you're like, oh, Cannonball 3, like Cannonball Run 3, whatever, and so it really is unfair to say this is Den of Thieves 2, right? Just say Den of Thieves Pantera. And also, I'm going to start referring to Den of Thieves 1 as Den of Thieves Core, right? So Den of Thieves Core, Den of Thieves Pantera, and frankly, any movies that have a good sequel that is a piece of art like this, let's do this. Let's use the term rather than using the iteration, the number iteration, right? Because people don't like sequels generally, and generally they go down. But this was a banger. This is way better than the first film. Way better than the first film. Like, not by a little bit, by a lot. And I highly, highly recommend you see this film. And I'm doing that because I think a lot of you are going to try to skip this. Do not watch this on the small screen. This movie 100% deserves the large screen. So get out there. 5 out of 5 stars. My Dungeon Master rating for this is 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, as a Dungeon Master, this is every Dungeon Master content, totally worth seeing. Go check it out. Okay, all right, let's get it. All right, now, how does this movie perfectly illustrate the way we can get a Dungeons and Dragons sequel? All right, so first of all, Den of Thieves, I think it's like 6 years old, right? Like Gerard Butler, O'Shea Simpson Jr., Ice Cube's son, no other stars to mention, like. It was a good action movie, but highly forgettable. I was not like, oh, I need Den of Thieves Pantera. Like, I was not saying that until they were like, hey, you interested in Den of Thieves Pantera? And I was like, well, wait a second. I saw a movie last year with Gerard Butler called Plane, and that was a banger. All right, I'm in. Let's do it. Right? And I was like, oh, and I really liked O'Shea Simpson Jr. in this role. He did really good. It was a good job, right? So this thing is amazing, right? And it perfectly explains how to get our Dungeons and Dragons sequel. So how did this movie get made, right? Well, I can tell you right now. No one was banging down the door for, Den of Thieves Pantera, right? Like, nobody was asking for this movie, right? So, and it's the same right now. Hollywood thinks it's the same for Dungeons and Dragons, right? Now, the Dungeons and Dragons fans absolutely want Dungeons and Dragons back, right? But the masses aren't calling for a sequel to Dungeons and Dragons, right? But Den of Thieves Pantera is extremely important. Let me explain why Den of Thieves Pantera is so important, okay? So why is Den of Thieves Pantera important? All right, let's get into it. Okay. So first of all, it was a good movie, not a great movie, right? Like I wasn't, you didn't hear me saying, oh, you guys got to go see Den of Thieves. It was a good action movie. I dug it. I was like, hey, I paid $8 for the ticket. It was worth $8. Like I didn't think another thing about it, right? And I think, I went to see the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves film. I'm pretty sure I saw it 5 times on the big screen, right? I took a party of 12 to see it. Before it even released, like a week before it released, I saw it with a couple of friends, and then I saw it like 3 times by myself. And that's all on the big screen. I saw it multiple times on different streamers as well, right? So, but it fits the same model. It fits exactly the same model as Den of Thieves. Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves wasn't, I think it was a great film. The world didn't think it was a great film. No one's screaming for it, right? I am, right? I'm not forgetting it. But generally, the macro American is not, I'm not going to pretend the macro American is begging for Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves 2, right? But it was good. And right now, in our current environment, a good movie can get a sequel. If it does what Den of Thieves Pantera 2 did. What did Den of Thieves Pantera 2 do to earn its sequel? This is really important. Pay very close attention. 4 things. It was incredibly cheap to make. Okay? Now, how did it get there? Well, it had a fantastic writer-director who knows how to keep the budget down. And also, writer-directors are highly needed now. Somebody who's going to write the story and shoot it, right? All these big blockbusters, do what you want. Like, you could split it up and make it, but this writer-director thing is real, right? This guy who made, and frankly, you could hire the dude who did Den of Thieves, Pantera, right? Like, to do D&D 2, right? I'd totally be down for it, right? Like, he can write it and he can shoot it, right? Like, this thing was it was beautiful. It looked absolutely fantastic, and its story was rock solid, okay? And get this, it's an anti-checkbox movie. We'll talk about that more. Hollywood has 3 checkboxes: anti-environmentalism, anti-religion, and one more, okay? And this movie was like, you could farbargo yourself. I ain't checking none of your Hollywood boxes, right? I don't give a crap about Hollywood boxes. I give a crap about getting Dungeons and Dragons, about getting Den of Thieves 3. And this movie, I think it's going to get a sequel. I really think it's going to get a sequel. And he's like, I'm just telling a narrative story here that's powerful, and that is a great movie. This was a great movie. Not a good movie, a great movie. Den of Thieves was good. Den of Thieves Core was good. Den of Thieves Pantera was great. Fantastic, right? And it's going to get a sequel, in my opinion, all right? And that's what we need for Dungeons and Dragons. So how did it do it? It cost nothing, man. Like, this thing was extremely cheap to make. How? Okay, let's count it down. 4 ways. Affordable stars. Gerard Butler is kind of thick and very old, right? He's an action star who, and I'm not saying this, go check his interviews. He's like, I eat Oreos and French fries, and the studio has to pay me to be thin. This guy does not stay in shape. He does not keep himself in action movie form. It's not me saying it. He literally says it. Go watch his interviews, right? This guy is cheap because he is an incredibly charismatic person, right? But he ain't willing to work too hard, right? Now, the thing is, a lot of people, I watched a Timothy Chalamet interview. He said he worked like the dickens to make A Complete Unknown. Fantastic movie. Go see that. He's like, I worked hard to make, Gerard Butler ain't working hard for anybody, right? Like, he's showing up on set and doing what he does. And get this, what he does is pretty good. Right? Like, but the thing is, he's not going to get 20. He's never going to, Gerard Butler ain't never going to get $20 million for a movie, right? Timothée Chalamet's on his way. He could, right? But Gerard Butler shows up and does what he does. And he's a pretty freaking awesome real movie star, even at half effort. And that's what he's putting in, right? But he was a banger. He did a great job in this film. He did his job. He showed up. He said the lines. And he was tall and handsome, and that's enough that's enough for government work today, right? Like, O'Shea Simpson Jr., Ice Cube's son, ain't nobody looking for him in a movie, right? Like, but he is extremely well cast in this role, and he plays it perfectly, right? And O'Shea Simpson Jr. and Gerard Butler worked extremely well together, right? It's not Dwayne, like, this is my point. Hollywood uses these huge blockbusters to do a bunch of nonsense, right? Like, you get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and you get Vin Diesel on set, right? In the Fast and Furious movies. And what do? They're like, well, you're paying us millions and millions of dollars, so I can be a jerk. I can insult my coworker and make this difficult for everybody, right? And that's what the two of them did, right? Like, they used the Hollywood extra to reward themselves with utter nonsense. None of that was here, right? Everybody on this movie was doing the job, working hard, right? And that's what we need for D&D. Affordable actors, right? Affordable actors, okay? So let's get into affordable actors, right? So what would this mean? So first of all, let's count them off, right? Chris Pine cost $11 million for D&D 1, for D&D Honor Among Thieves. Was he worth it? Absolutely. He did a great job, okay? But if we're trying to keep the budget down on D&D 2, do we need him? I don't think so, right? Because he's got a lot of options. Like, he's, Wonder Woman's boyfriend, and, like, he's got a role in Star Trek, which might be spinning up another movie. He's got people coming to him and saying, hey, put me in a movie. He's going to cost a fortune. He's going to cost $10, $15, $20 million. You can make half the movie for just his salary alone, right? Okay? We need $50 million budget. I think the budget on D&D was like 80 or 100. It was pretty high. Right? But if we can deliver a D&D sequel for $50 million, that's a big deal, right? So who could you get if the whole movie's going to cost $50 million? You could get Michelle Rodriguez for $5. I'll bet you could get Michelle Rodriguez for $5. And I think you could stand up the entire sequel on Michelle Rodriguez and then a bunch of actors who work for scale. And not small ones. I think there are people who would volunteer to get to work for scale in D&D Honor Among Thieves, because I do think it could be a major series if it gets another chance, right? And I think a lot of actors would understand that, right? So I think you could get some real stars who would work for scale, literally, okay? All right. So when you're like, wait a second, what about Sophia Lillis, right? Not a big enough star to run the movie with. Justice Smith, fantastic actor. I actually think he's the best actor in all of Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. And he's done some banger content and some real art, right? Like, he's a real for realsies actor, right? I think he's the best actor in D&D Honor Among Thieves, except Jonathan. Just kidding. JK, just kidding. All right. Jonathan, right? But Justice Smith, he can't anchor a film. He can't put butts in seats. Michelle Rodriguez can. That's proven, right? She's been in 10 Fast and Furious movies, man. Like, 9, I think. I don't think she was in Tokyo Drift. You know what I mean. Let's keep going. All right. And then, so Sophia Lillis, and then Justice Smith. And I think that's it. That's all. That's everybody who was in it, right? Like, all right, so that's everybody, right? And so you can anchor the movie with Michelle Rodriguez for $5 million, and then shoot this thing. Now, what else? Den of Thieves, Pantera had super cheap location. So don't shoot anywhere in America. Don't shoot anywhere in Canada. Shoot this thing in Bulgaria, whatever that, like where Latveria. Shoot this thing in wherever Dr. Doom's country is, right? Like shoot this thing that in something that ends with an Ovia for pennies, right? And that's what they did with Pantera. And now it looked beautiful. It really looked beautiful, right? But I don't think a single scene was shot in America, right? So you're going to save a lot of money there. Okay? Affordable, oh, and then affordable action, right? This movie had one moderate action scene and one outrageously banger action scene. Fantastic car chase, great, rock and roll action. It was a real action scene, right? But they kept the action scenes to one major action scene, and it wasn't some Transformers action scene where you got like where it's 25 minutes long and there's enough CGI to, it was very reasonable, extremely well done, right? You got to do the same thing with D&D Honor Among Thieves sequel, right? One moderate action scene, one major action scene. And then also, there was a lot of scenes that had the shape and the attributes of action, but actually weren't action. And they used the narrative to smooth that over, right? Because I was like, yo, man, I've been watching this for 40 minutes. Ain't nobody shot nobody, right? Like, what's going on? And then they turned it, and they're like, here's the reason why that's happening, and the narrative can lower the cost. Last thing, listen carefully, okay? Product placement. It has got to come to fantasy projects, okay? This is a major problem in Hollywood, and we need to fix it. So how do you do that, all right? So first of all, I'm going to say this for Dungeons & Dragons, but they should do the same thing for the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. I don't care what you say. Put some anachronism in. I want Michelle Rodriguez in the film, right? And I want her wearing Nike sneakers with a Nike swoosh, right? And you're like, wait a second, this is going to be like, in Faerun. I don't care, right? Like, we need product placement. Porsche paid half the budget on Den of Thieves Pantera. Half the budget, man. Porsche paid a fortune to put their super sucky, stupid electric car in this film, right? And be like, hey, everybody, look how cool this electric car is. It wasn't. It did look cool, right? But you still couldn't get me, man. For shame. If you were a cool dude or a cool woman, do not put your butt cheeks on some stupid electrical vehicle. Man, it's just, man, like, ugh, that's disgusting. All right, but Porsche paid, right? I think this thing was profitable before it ever sold a single ticket. I'm convinced that Adam Sandler's movies are profitable, that they have made more money from product placement than they have cost. And that all the ticket sales are gravy, right? Like, and you're like, I don't know about this guy. That guy has made $4 billion at the box office, and that number is like 2 years old, right? Like he's probably made 5 by now. Adam Sandler knows what the heck he is doing. Okay, so that's my point. That is where you got to land with this stuff, right? So we need product placement. And you're like, oh, well, you can't just have a wizard running around you can't have a barbarian fighter, a human barbarian running around in sneakers. Yes, you can, right? I don't care about the anachronism. I would like 5 D&D films, and if we just shove this anachronism out of the way and put Nike swooshes on everything and put branded logos on this fantasy stuff, yes, it looks a little silly, right? I get it. But this will save $50, $25, $50, $75 million could be made, and we can make these films. And I would much rather go that direction, right? So it is a little bit anachronistic. It's a little bit silly from a narrative perspective. From a business perspective, it must happen, right? This is a terrible aspect. And you're, I don't like that, Scott. Who gives an F what you think? You're not going to determine the success or failure of this. The macro American will. And I'm convinced the macro American would love cool, awesome D&D movies. And if it's going to cut the budget in half to throw a Nike swoosh on it, they ain't going to care, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less.